Hi, everyone, and welcome to Get Hired Live. I'm Andrew Seaman, the editor for LinkedIn's Job Searches and Careers. So welcome to Get Hired Live. It's always so great to have you here on Fridays. We love talking about what we can do to help everyone in the job market. So please start by introducing yourself in the comments, because one of the best things that I get from people after these shows is that people are able to connect with each other. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your job search and a little bit about what's going on with your career. So maybe you're looking to move into a new field. Maybe you're literally looking to move to a new area. And then what you do is, once you see someone who maybe has shared interest or shared goals, connect with each other. And then maybe you could help each other with your job searches. You can look over each other's resumes. You could share contacts. There's a lot of help that can be done just through helping each other with your job search. And actually, there's been research shown that people who job search together end up finding work faster. And obviously, networking is the cornerstone of a successful job search. So what better time to start than right now? And we have so many people joining us in the stream. You're already starting to introduce yourselves. We have Tanya from Jacksonville, Florida, Kesha from New York, Jack from Detroit, Herman from Holland, Carlos from Michigan, and I see Franz from Haiti, Dolores from Dallas, Texas, Rebecca from Connecticut, and Jean-Luc from France. So we have so many people joining us from all over the world. Keep introducing yourselves, and also keep telling us what questions you have about your job search, because we're going to be taking those in just a little bit. And we have such a great guest for you today. We're beaming her in all the way across from the Atlantic. So welcome to the show, Sonal Bahl. You are a career strategist and HR expert. So welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you for having me. I am ecstatic to be here.
Yes, and so Sonal, can you tell us a little bit about the topic that we're going to discuss today, which is salary negotiation? And I think this is one of the things that people get tripped up all the time with their job search. So why do you think people end up sort of, having anxiety about this and end up sort of, tripping up on this question?
Yes. First of all, I want to give the disclaimer that salary negotiation is a topic which you will get a lot of advice on from a lot of different people. So everything I'm sharing today, I want to give this disclaimer. Take it with a pinch of salt. Take it, toss it if it doesn't make sense for you. But the idea is to share some universal truths. And a second quick thing I wanted to say is I've prepared something specially for today, a free downloadable, and I'll share it later. The reason I think, Andrew, salary negotiation trips a lot of people up is perceptions and reality, which are very different. And there is massive fear related to asking for more. Funnily enough, we are born fantastic negotiators. You look around with kids, it's a very natural ability. They have a fantastic sense of timing. They know parents' buying behavior, right? And I say they, we all used to be kids. And at some point it's subdued. So I want to talk about what we can do to address all of this so that people who are watching today, prepare the best way possible, because we're talking serious money here, Andrew. We're talking $500,000. So that's the bad news. $500,000. And if you're in a different part of the world, you can translate that into your local currency. This is the amount of money you will lose out if you don't negotiate. That's 1/3 of people out there who don't negotiate, if you compound it. And the other bad news, Andrew, is women. Women is not bad news. What is bad news is women don't ask. And I want to talk about 3 things here. Women don't ask because it's the fear element. And that's a big problem because of the wage gap. And also the fact that women live longer than men. So our money has to last us longer. And second, there's something called pink tax. Pink tax, Google it. Anything you buy in the supermarket or a hair appointment, you pay more than men do. And the third thing, which is the pregnancy penalty. Anybody who's had kids here, it's not always easy to get back. So it's more expensive to live as a woman in today's world. So this is the bad news. But we'll get to the good news and all the tips.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's such an important topic because people change jobs. And this is a chance a lot of times for people to actually get a bump in salary when they
Yes.
switch jobs.
Yes.
And if you accept a lower salary or something like that, it can really set you up to fall behind your
Yes.
colleagues or even just in your industry in general. And we have
Yes.
so many people joining us. We have Lewis from South Carolina, Randall from Burbank, Valerie from Arizona, Jose from Peru, Ina from London, Clyde from San Diego, Shelly from Colorado, and Sophia from Berlin. And you're obviously joining us all the way from Brussels. So this is truly a global show. And I guess, let's jump into the topic. So what can people do to negotiate a starting salary that's right for them? And also our producers are putting that link to your website in the comments, so people can be watching out for that.
Perfect. So the good news is negotiation is a skill that you can learn. Everyone can learn it. And I'm going to break this down into three. So before negotiation, like the formal negotiation, during, and after. So before negotiation is the foundation, and you got to get this right. We're going to start with the very first part, and that is related to your homework to understand what is your self-worth. You've got all the details out there. Online, you Google salaries in my region, you've got everything in there. You've got to check it out, understand it in a lot more detail. But my favorite thing to do here is talk to real recruiters in your field, in your industry, because they have very up-to-date information and they have access to things like Robert Half, Robert Walters salary surveys, and they can tell you what it is you can expect to make at your level. So the research is critical, because if you don't know what you want, anything will make you happy, right? The second thing I want to talk about is the fear. The fear is real, and I want to break this fear down into three. Why are we scared to ask for more? The first is, if I ask for more, they're not going to like me. That's not really true, because 82% of all recruiters or hiring managers expect you to negotiate. And yet only 1/3 of us do so. And I would say to the contrary, Andrew, people who are going to be going into roles like sales or procurement, etc., negotiation that's a great time to showcase your negotiation skills. If you don't, I would say you lose out. The second fear that people have is, if I ask for more, they're going to rescind the offer. They're going to take it away. And I can tell you that is extremely rare. That is not done unless there's, force majeure, big recession, or a crisis, or a pandemic, right? Or you didn't do things the right way. Maybe you were too they didn't feel like there was an alignment of values. Those are very rare things, right? And the third is, they'll say no. So what? It's status quo. They've already said no. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. So the second thing is fear, and you've got to get that right. So this is the before negotiation. I don't know, Andrew, if any questions before I continue? Is that okay?
No. I think keep going. And I think, knowing your market value is so important. And like you said, asking around is really important to get there.
Exactly. So another thing related to homework is knowing your, I call it MAN, M-A-N, minimum acceptable number. This is based on the research you have. And you keep in mind, what is your operating cash flow? Think like a company. You're a company of one. What are your expenses? What's coming in? What do you need to have a good life, right? I'm not saying annual trips to Monaco. Be realistic. Know your MAN, minimum acceptable number. And I like to add a little 10% for contingency, and understand what your expenses are. So with this and with your research, you have a very good idea. So this is before. Now during, that's where the fun begins and the rubber meets the road and everybody's like, oh my God, how's it going to go? I would say the very first thing you need to keep in mind is you're on the same team. There's a lot of advice out there that says you're in it to win it, and you're elbowing, and it's like, oh my gosh, you got to get maximum value out of it, and you got to beat your opponent. Not really, right? They've taken months to find you. Like I, as a recruiter, sometimes I've taken 1 year to find someone, and I'm so close to the end, and I'm about to close the deal. Last thing I want is to see this fold. As a recruiter, my job is to make sure you're happy with the offer you receive. Your job is to make sure you're happy with the offer you receive. So you both have the same goal, if you think about it. Please remember to keep this in mind. I can't stress this enough. And second, during negotiations, and they give you an offer, take your time. Never, ever say yes or no immediately. Take it home, discuss it with some trusted friends or family, do your research, prepare a list of questions. And particularly, I would here, it's important to say that, if you're moving locations, different city or different country, the gross figure they'll give you will be like, wow, I'm so tempted to say yes. That sounds amazing. Yeah, but keep in mind, that's a very seductive looking figure, but, there's deductions maybe you didn't think about. So it's worth it to, spend time and, do the math on there. And this one is a funny one. Always be polite. Always say thank you, please. I understand. I understand this is not easy. Show empathy. I can't stress this enough. So everything I'm sharing today is in an acronym format, and that's in the freebie. A is always be polite, so you can anchor. That's another A, properly. And here, Andrew, I want to give an example of kids, because kids are amazing at this. And a few days ago, my 8-year-old, this is a funny story, my 8-year-old goes to my husband and says, Dad, I would love this lightsaber, and it glows in the dark. It's amazing. I got to have it. My husband's like, okay, let's check it out. He went to Amazon, and it's $200. I'm like, my husband's like, eyes popped out. They're like, yeah, we're not getting that. Yeah, I know there's another one for 20. My husband's like, it's going to break in 2 days. And then he said, actually there's a $2 skin, which I want for my latest game. So when it comes to anchoring, they just know. So, you start at a sort of higher amount, which will be comfortable, but you've built contingencies. So take the example of kids, because we always tell kids, you will get it if you ask nicely. What's the magic word? Please. So we got to remember that as grown-ups as well. So yeah.
No, that's a really good idea. Yeah. And we have so many people asking questions about salaries here. And we have some people here talking about negotiating salaries. And actually we have someone who said that they actually had an offer rescinded when they tried to negotiate the salary. That's not common, is it?
It is not common. And if that person could explain why it was rescinded, because that's important. This is rare, but there's maybe things there that we don't know about. There's layers, below the surface, or somebody, wasn't expecting it, or maybe they don't have a nice culture. I don't know. You never know. Worth investigating.
Yeah. And then we have a question here also from Mark, and I think this is a good one. And a lot of people run into this where Mark says, if you're told that the pay is set by corporate, do you accept that at face value or push back? Because sometimes there will be an offer that says this is an offer and it's non-negotiable.
Take it or leave it. That's a fantastic question, Mark. And I think that it comes down to the companies. Some companies, for example, nonprofit or startups, the salaries are public, right? So it's given. And you can't negotiate because it's going to affect the internal parity and equity of the rest of the team members. So I have a solution for that. And that's one of the tips I was coming to, is everything is negotiable. Everything. And if you are not sure, if they're not going to accept it, try the bonus. Try, learning opportunities. Try a better title, a corner office. Flexible working hours. There's no end. If you're going to be moving, can they pay for housing? Can they pay for the entire relocation? Can they pay for your kids' schooling, childcare? My husband or wife has to learn a new language. We're going to France. Can they pay for my commuting? Can they pay for what is the other thing I was going to say? Lunch. Everything matters, and there is no end. And I've got all those written down in the freebie. But honestly, sky's the limit. You've got to ask. You got to ask nicely. And if the answer is no, it's no. But at least you asked, right? I just respect myself a little more. Even at the airport, right? I'm like, can I get an upgrade? Like, it's really embarrassing, but you can see the flight's not very full. Can I get an upgrade to business class? Sure. And I'm like, whew, there you go. Asking and not asking.
Yeah, and actually, I've heard, and I wish I remember who told me the story, but they had someone who actually negotiated that in their, as part of the deal for them signing on, is that they got one lunch every month with a C-suite executive at the company. And what happened was they ended up forming a really good bond with some of the executives, even though that they were a lower level employee, and it really helped with their promotion. So that was actually in the hiring agreement that they got to have lunch once a month with sort of a high level manager. And then pretty soon they were able to climb the ranks because they had those power brokers as connections. So it was actually, so that's something else that shows, it is negotiable.
It's beautiful what you just said, because the beauty of this is it comes down to what you value. If you value promotion, mobility, that's a great example. If you value, I love my work, but I also love my private time, you value flexible hours. There's no right or wrong. You got to do what's best for you and your situation.
Yeah. And we have a question here from Lauren, and I think this is a good question too. Who do you recommend puts out the first number? There's a lot of controversy around this. And I think the people sometimes worry that on an application, it'll say, anticipated starting salary or something like that. How do you navigate that space? And should you wait for them to give you a number?
That's a tricky question, because you're going to get 10 different answers. And you got to choose the answer that matters to you. I'm not an employment lawyer, but I do know in certain parts of the United States and maybe even rest of the world, there's certain questions that are illegal. This is one of them. What are your what are you currently making? Now, there's no black and white for me, Andrew, but I do want to say that if money comes up very early in the conversation, particularly, I don't love it. I want to lead with, what is this role about? Because firstly, I'm not shopping, right? I'm serious. So I'm like, listen, I'm really excited about the position and I'm not here to waste your time. I'd love to discuss numbers when we are closer to an offer. Till then, I just want to understand the role a little bit better. You got to you can try this sort of technique and see if it works or not. But if they are aggressive sometimes, or, they don't take no for an answer, then I would say you can say, all right, based on my research of market data for my position, my function, my industry, my geography, I have seen and I have been approached for roles that range between X and Y. And X should be, I don't use the word should a lot, X should be your minimum acceptable number plus 10%, and then take it up. But I wouldn't start with that, and I wouldn't even ask if it doesn't come up in the conversation. So, hey, would you have any questions for me, Andrew? Yeah. So, how much does this pay? I'd feel like try not to lead with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And the people I've talked to who, they're experts in negotiation and lawyers, they've often talked about once you put a number out there, it's an anchor. So everything will be sort of go back to that number. Yes. And actually, we have a question here from Joel, who says that he lowballed himself in an initial interview, and they finally sent him an offer after 5 months because of the pandemic. They finally got him an offer, but now he wants to renegotiate. Yes. So is it possible to do that now that they've sent him an offer and he sort of lowballed back 5 months ago?
Good question. We've all done that before, so don't be hard on yourself if you've lowballed yourself. However, when you receive an offer and when you have already signed, I don't know if he signed already, Andrew, but when you've already signed, don't negotiate again. I personally don't love it as HR or recruitment. I feel like that person, cannot be sort of, is not really trustworthy. But you can, if you've accepted it, then accept it. And then within 3 months or 6 months, you see your performance, you see you're making a big difference on the bottom line, on the top line. Then you can ask and say, what is the process, for me to move to this grade? Focus on grade, leveling up, because that comes with more money, as opposed to just focusing on the money aspect.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, speaking of sort of, possibly lowballing, we have a question here from Brianna, who says, I'm a college graduate looking for my first full-time job. I have about 8 months experience in my desired industry. What can I negotiate? And I think a lot of entry-level people, they stress about this because they may know what an entry-level position pays, but they may not feel like they need to ask for that, or they worry about that. So what is your advice for entry-level employees?
Yes. A lot of entry-level grads or new employees have this notion that they don't have enough leverage to negotiate. And I cannot disagree more. at the end of the day, we're not all equal. You have a certain set of life experiences that distinguish you from everyone else. So first of all, take advantage of LinkedIn. Oh my gosh, so many people do not do it even in 2021. Have a fantastic profile that showcases how awesome you are, your banner, your headline, your picture, your about section, etc. And the other thing is, you've done projects, you've done internships, you were, I don't know, a leadership role within the student council, or you had a very specific skill set and you were known to be a single point of contact for that. Show all of that, but not in a vacuum. Show all of that and how it is extremely valuable to the company. You've got to have a little bit of translate. You don't want your skills to be lost in translation. You want to show how all the awesomeness that you have is relevant to the company. And if the company is hiring entry-level roles, guess what? They want a fresh set of eyes. And you bring that fresh set of eyes. Everything that you think is a weakness of yours because you don't have enough experience, I want you to convert it into a strength.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And obviously, I think entry-level employees, they always run into people who will sometimes underestimate them. And I always tell students and people who are just graduating, that is actually such a great tool for you to use, because you get to prove them wrong and you get to sort of shock them about how great you actually are. So I think that's really good advice. And we have a question here that talks about, how do you negotiate as a returning employee? And I think this brings up maybe a larger question sometimes about, if they have asked for your current salary or your previous salary. In the United States, at least, there are several states that have outlawed that. So they can't ask about what your previous or current salary is. And that's coming from Evelyn. She's wondering, what do you do as a returning employee? And obviously, what do you do if they ask what your current salary is?
So, Evelyn, it comes down to what you're comfortable with, right? And if it's illegal, then, you can say that actually, for example, I'll give you an example. You are not allowed to ask about marital status, children. It's the same thing. It's very irrelevant. So one thing you can say is, okay, thank you for asking. Can you help me understand what made you ask that question? You got to sort of put it back in their court, right? Now, it comes down to what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with it, share the number. And I know this is a little bit controversial, but if you've been on a higher side, share the number so they have an idea. If you've been on the lower side, the issue is not that you're sharing it. The issue is, I'm sorry to say this, slimy recruiters who are going to squeeze every last penny and give you the lowest possible. That's very short-term thinking, and I'm going to vent here for 20 seconds because this has an impact later. Because when these people will join, we're like, I'm having a beer with Jim and Mark at the bar, and I'm like, what? They're making 100 and I'm at 70K? What on earth? So good recruiters want to make sure your internal equity is good. So to answer that question, Evelyn, put it back to them. And you can also then say, based on my experience, and you have certain skills. I have a detailed video on my YouTube channel on what to do for long-term unemployment when you're coming back. And I don't want to get into the details here, but there is a way that you can convert this so-called weakness of yours. If you do a SWOT analysis in corporate, SWOT, SWOT analysis, how can you convert the fact that you have a gap in your resume into a strength, into an opportunity, and address the threat? You can address the threat by saying you're not going to, your reason for taking the gap is done. Maybe you were unwell or, had a sick relative. The strength is you're different from everyone else. You've had a gap, and in that gap, you've learned certain skills, life skills, which are very valuable that others don't have. Yeah, maybe you just became a mom, for example, and oh my gosh, new moms, like CEO, right? Taking care of a child, catering, health, nurse, chauffeur, everything, but also organization skills, productivity skills, right? And how can you convert this into an opportunity? The opportunity, Evelyn, is you are available to join next week. For me, that's a win-win. When somebody looks competent, but they're immediately available as well.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. We have a lot of other people asking about career gaps, and so I think that'll help them. I saw Pratibha asking about that, and Majuba. Yes. So I think they'll take a lot away from that. And also, I think a lot of people who have career gaps, they they tend, and I think anyone's just bad at self-evaluation. So a lot of people, they say, oh, I've been out of work all this time, but in reality they've been doing stuff with their kids' school organizations, local community organizations. So it's not like you've just been necessarily sitting in the house all that time. You've been doing stuff.
The attitude has to change, Andrew. I've been on a break, so I'm less than you. That has to change, because you've been doing things which are amazing. And you've got to show that as a strength, because, volunteer work, etc. And anyone who rejects you because life happened to you says more about them than it does about you. It's not personal.
Yeah. And, we have a question here from Janelle, who says that she's looking to change careers after age 40. She has an associate's degree. She's Black. She's a woman. How does she begin? And I think also there's a question of salary for people who are changing careers. So what's your advice for Janelle?
Janelle, your best friends in the whole wide world are transferable skills. And you've got to firstly focus on the learning aspect and then focus on the transferable skill. Learning aspect, if they were to hire someone with less experience than you in that job, would they be able to do it for less amount of money? Probably. But if you have the necessary courses, skill set, etc., you can walk the talk, you use their language, then it definitely helps you. And the second thing I'm going to say is you have certain skills. Janelle, I don't know what you were doing before. So let's say you were doing X before and now you want to do Y. There's certain things you were doing in X, problem solving, and the new one says we need analytical skills. They're pretty much the same thing, tomato. Then the first one said excellent communication skills, and you've got something. So map it. There's a way to do it. And that helps you to build the messaging. The messaging you want is, I had this career. I was pretty fantastic at it. And this is the new career I want, and I can do it. And the other thing you want to do is, there's an expression there's a quote by Rumi. When you're setting out on a journey, never take advice from someone who's never left home. So talk to people who are already 2 steps ahead of you. Don't talk to people who will tell you this is impossible. Trust me, mindset is 80% of any job search or career transition. And instead, talk to people who have been there, done that, and who are doing today what you would love to do. Have informational chats, broaden your network, have a target, which is 2 coffee chats a day, be really have a proper agenda with it, and you're going to get there.
Yes. And I think setting that goal, as you said, 2 coffee chats a day or something like that, I think that's one of the things that can keep people going during a job search when maybe they don't hear back from applications or they're not hearing back from other people. You could set a goal of saying, listen, I want to have 2 informational interviews a week or 2 chats like that. And you're accomplishing something, and it's actually going to get you really far ahead in your job search. So I think that's a really good piece of advice. And we've heard back from Joel, who is the person, I believe, who said he lowballed himself a while ago and he added more information. So he said he has not accepted the offer yet, but they reached out for a final interview saying they're ready for him to start next month and he expects an offer soon. So does that give him a window to renegotiate?
Yes. Just because you said yes verbally doesn't mean you're tied to it. Obviously, explain why, and you can say based on some new research that I've done or some market data. And Joel, maybe let's not lie here, but if you are having conversations with other people, that's leverage for you. So take advantage of that as well, and not hold it on their head like some sort of threat, but that makes you look more desirable. And the combination of scarcity and urgency, they're expecting me to join. If you have that definitely helps. That's the oldest trick in buyer psychology. But yes, the short answer is yes. And I have a quick tip here, because it's one of the tips that I didn't speak about. If you can, Joel, because let's face it, negotiation is uncomfortable. It is. If you can, try and do the negotiation on a Thursday. That's a very weird thing, but there's research out there that says when you do negotiation on a Thursday, people are in more of a giving mood because they want it to be over before their weekend even begins.
Yeah, no, actually, and also I always find Thursdays are just a really nice day because Friday's around the corner, and
Exactly.
Monday is the farthest point away,
Do not,
really, for you.
Joel, do not start this on a Monday. And in fact, I have a bonus tip here. Somebody mentioned on my YouTube channel, Thursdays, I can't tell you how many people put in the comments, hey, listen, this worked. All your tips worked to the T. And it happened to be a Thursday. And one guy said, for me, it was even better Thursday after lunch because you don't want to talk to a hangry person on any given day of the week. So they are well fed, they're happy, and ask nicely. Joel, wish you the best.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think that is such a good tip about not negotiating with a hangry person. Hungry and angry. And we have a question. I think this is a really good question, so maybe end on from Kelly. And it's something that there's been a lot of conversations about recently. And she says there's a reluctance out there to talk about salary amongst coworkers and peers. How do we do research if there's a reluctance to share that information? And obviously, there's been a lot of research and discussion lately about coworkers sharing their salaries. What do you think about the space? And is this something that you should ask your coworkers about, or how should that conversation happen?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it's very delicate. Sorry, what was the name? Andrew? Jelly? Kelly. I can't believe I said jelly. There's it's delicate. And Kelly, there is a zone where coworkers become friends. You have that friend, getting into that friend zone. If you're there and you feel comfortable asking, which also means you feel comfortable answering, then go ahead and do so. It's just that the world we live in today, like in the perfect world, we would all know each other's salaries. It would be public information. And a lot of companies do that already. They know that, startups, nonprofits, they do that. But in the rest of, corporate world, you have a lot of legacy, which means people were hired on a crazy number, which didn't make any sense. And maybe they're much higher than you today, right? And they may not feel comfortable sharing. So approach it with a bit of sugar and a bit of salt. It's a great resource if you think there is a trust element there, and you're also comfortable sharing what your own salary is.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip. And I think, you could probably judge your coworkers about how exactly that feels to them. Yeah. So I think that's a really good piece of advice.
And Kelly, you can also ask, did they negotiate when they were hired? And that will give you an idea.
And also, I think, when you're doing those informational coffees or those chats, those are also a really good way to ask, because those people, yes, had been in your position at one time, if they are, a little bit senior to you now, and you could yes, say, what should you expect in that role?
Yes.
And they could tell you what they made, or they could tell you what their friends made or something, or who their direct reports make. So that's a really good piece to sort of say, like, crack open the number game.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Sonal. This has been really such a great conversation. We had so many people joining in on the chat, and I think a lot of people got a lot out of this.
I hope so. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And, thank you all for joining us, because I think, it's always such a great conversation, and you make really the conversation happen on your end too by listening and contributing your thoughts and questions. So thank you for stopping by. And, in case you are ever looking for some really informative content, always be sure to come back to the LinkedIn news page, because we have so much coming to you on a regular basis. And on Monday, actually, my colleague, Caroline Fairchild, will be talking about how corporate America is doing in its diversity efforts 1 year after nationwide protest in the US. So Caroline will talk with 2 experts about how to address racism in the workplace, and that's Monday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. And then obviously, we are here every Friday having these conversations about job searching and your career. So join us on Friday, because we have really great guests, Lindsay Pollock, and she is the author of the book Recalculating, and we'll be talking about navigating careers in the changing world of work. And my producers will be dropping in the link in the chat, so you can RSVP right there. And thank you so much again for joining us, and thank you for everyone who makes makes the show possible behind the scenes. We have Gianna Carrington, Ellie, Wes, and Madison back there. They're the ones who make this show work and be possible. So thank you to all of them. And thank you to you again. Have a wonderful week. I will see you next week. And remember to take care of yourself. You can only be a good candidate. You can only get hired if you're well enough to do so. So until next week, best of luck.